This is NuPhy's new Air60HE, the world's first low-profile magnetic keyboard, and I think it's going to be popular. Before we get into the details, you should know that NuPhy sent me this keyboard. However, they had no input on the video, so as always, I'll do my best to share my honest perspective on what I think is good and not so good about it. That said, let's get into it. The Air60HE is a 61 key pre-built keyboard with hot swappable switches that starts at 120 USD. The only real configuration decision that you have is whether you go with the low profile magnetic Jade switches or add $20 to the cost and opt for the Jade Pros. Both are custom collaboration switches made by Gateron. I received the Jade Pros in my board, so I can't comment too much on the standard Jades, but the Pros have a slightly higher actuation force, ranging from 40 to 60 gram force, compared to the 30 to 50 for the standard Jades. And the Jade Pros also have a fully palm construction, while the standard Jades have a transparent polycarbonate top, palm stem, and polyamide base. Either way, they both come pre-lubricated, but it's nice to see palm on palm for the Pros because that tends to smooth even more with continued use. Otherwise, NuPhy gives you the option of adding a wrist rest, desk mat, and a set of shine-through keycaps, but the only default color option for the Air60HE is this gray, black, and purple theme, which I think looks good enough. The keycaps are NuPhy's slim NSA low-profile design with dye-sublimated characters. Most of the keys are PBT, with the exception of the transparent ones, which are a smoother polycarbonate. One thing that's nice is that we get plenty of alternative keycaps, so you can eliminate the transparent keys if you find them distracting. And you can swap out the first row to be Mac or Windows themed. And it's worth noting that NuPhy sells lots of different variations of their NSA keycaps, so if you don't like this theme, you should be able to find something else. The keyboard itself is nice and compact, with minimal case bezels encircling the keys. Like many other NuPhy keyboards, the case is sadly snap sealed though, so there isn't any easy way to crack it open and make internal modifications. However, I do like that the top case is aluminum while the base is ABS, giving the Air60HE a premium look while keeping the weight in check. You'll also notice the functional light bars on either side of the keyboard. These are the same as the rest of the Air lineup, providing some neat color accents with a few different effects and color options, while also communicating information like caps lock status, as well as the light sleep mode and the keyboard mode toggle. Speaking of which, as the Air60HE is a wired-only keyboard, you'll notice there's only one toggle switch on the back of the body, which allows you to jump between 3 keyboard modes on the fly. By default, these are set to gaming, Windows, and Mac configurations, but you can customize them using the NuPhyIO software that I'll highlight shortly. The benefit of this gaming-focused wired-only design is that it has a wild polling rate and PCB scanning frequency of 8,000 Hz each, and the latency is about 1/8 of a millisecond. The Air60HE also includes south-facing RGB backlights, which offer 20 pre-configured effects, and reflect quite brightly off of the aluminum plate below. NuPhy usually does a good job of creating well-lit keyboards, and the Air60HE is no exception. Flipping the keyboard over, we find a horizontal Roman column motif cut into the ABS base, as well as a mirror-finished metallic brand badge centrally located between the kickstand-style collapsible feet, which allow the keyboard to transition from its default 3.1 degree typing position to 7 degrees or a quite steep 10 degrees. My personal preference is for 7 degrees for most of my productivity work. On the inside, NuPhy has opted for a rigid top-mounted structure to keep the keyboard as stable as possible for the magnetic switch performance. They've also eliminated the IXPE switch pad and gone with a simple internal acoustic structure consisting of some plate foam, PCB foam, and a silicone slab molded to the case base. They've also opted for some snap-mounted stabilizers attached to the aluminum plate, as well as 2 silicone dampeners beneath the spacebar. Before we get to an audio sample, this video was made possible in part by Ultrahuman, whose Ring Air fitness tracker I've been testing over the past few weeks. 3 things I've come to enjoy about it have been: number 1, the form factor. Fitness rings free up my wrist for a mechanical watch, and I like mechanical watches. Plus, the Ultrahuman Ring Air is noticeably thinner, though slightly wider, than my previous fitness ring, which, coupled with its light weight, make it very comfortable for 24-hour wear. Number 2, the workout monitoring interface. I'm trying to improve my aerobic capacity by engaging in more Zone 2 workouts, and the Ultrahuman app provides me with a live estimate of which workout zone I'm currently in based on my heart rate. While in a tracked workout, I get this information to tailor my exercise approach. And finally, 3, the subscription fees, or rather lack thereof. This one's simple. Subscription fatigue is real, and I like the idea of freely accessing my health data whenever I want. If you feel the same way, I would encourage you to check out the Ultrahuman Ring Air using the affiliate link below in order to save 10% on your purchase, while also supporting this channel. That said, let's have a listen to the Air60HE. The most noticeable thing about the typing sound is the prominence of the spacebar stabilizers, which are unfortunately pronounced and tinny despite the spacebar dedicated silicone slabs and a good amount of stabilizer pre-lubing. Perhaps something that can be addressed with further tuning or a band-aid modification. Otherwise, the keyboard has a generally crisp and fairly muted sound, likely owing to the stiff construction and layers of internal dampening. Because the Air60HE is a magnetic keyboard, it isn't QMK and VIA compatible. However, NuPhy does have the best third-party firmware customizer that I've tried to date with NuPhyIO. This is a free web-based configurator whose changes automatically apply in real time, just like VIA. It handles the basic things like key remapping and light customization from the key bindings and light effects tabs, respectively, both of which have clean and intuitive interfaces. It's also worth noting that you can jump between the default gaming, Windows, and Mac modes by toggling the physical switch on the back of the keyboard, and that each of these have 4 layers available for customization, which is plenty of space to make the Air60HE map to whatever your needs may be. I quite like that NuPhy has included key codes for all of the RGB controls, both for the backlight and the light bars, because it's quite common for the secondary RGB controls to be left out of configurators. However, I did have to spend some time customizing the Mac functions layer, layer 9, to work as a Mac keyboard should, and to allow for quick access to all of the backlight and light bar controls that I wanted. Feel free to pause here to copy my configuration. It's important to note that because this is a 60% keyboard, the arrow cluster is enabled using the question mark, command, and option control keys while holding down on the function button. This is something I'm still getting used to after about 2 weeks of using the keyboard non-stop, but I'm sure I can adapt if I have to. As someone who regularly uses the arrows to jump around a document, highlighting things and holding shift, as well as the option and command buttons, I also had to add these peripheral keys to the Mac function layer so that they'd be available for chord combinations while using the arrows. Otherwise, with NuPhyIO, you can add specialized magnetic-driven functionality to each of the keys individually by right-clicking the key from the Key Bindings tab. Here you have the option to configure dynamic keystrokes, which allow up to 4 keys to be triggered with a single press-release stroke, as well as mod tap, which functions differently depending on whether you hold the key or just press it, and toggle key, which locks an action on or off by tapping the key. Then there's also rapid shift, SOCD, and hypertap, all of which are different methods of enabling rapid switching between 2 keys, commonly directional keys for gaming. It's worth noting here that the SOCD and similar methods have begun to be banned in some games, so make sure that you know what's allowed in the games that you play to avoid getting kicked out or banned. More traditional magnetic switch controls are also available from the Trigger Settings tab. Here you can select one, multiple, or all of the keys at once and customize the actuation point in increments as fine as 20 microns, ranging from 0.1 to 3.3 millimeters. You can also enable dead zones at the top and bottom of the keystroke if you notice that you're getting some false readings, and you can customize rapid trigger settings separately for the press and release functionality. Here you have the ability to set your distance in a wild 10 micron increment from 0.01 to 2.2 millimeters. And of course, there is a handy key press visualizer on the left side to help you understand just how deep of a press you're creating each time that you engage a key. This is also where you can indicate which switch you're using, as the Hall effect sensors and keyboard firmware need to know so that they can interpret the signals correctly and serve up the appropriate configuration options. There are additional function toggles available in the mode settings page. This is where you could change the polling rate for each keyboard mode independently, and from the general settings page, you can check your keyboard firmware version and perform updates as they become available. Speaking of updates, as of October 22nd, NuPhyIO was updated to include macro recording, which has been anxiously anticipated for some time, and I've confirmed that it also functions on the Field75HE that I had previously reviewed. In NuPhyIO, you can't develop macros using syntax, which is my preferred method when I use VIA, but you do have the option of recording a series of keystrokes either at their actual speed or at a consistent increment. This isn't as powerful as macros in QMK and VIA, but it has been good enough for most things that I'm trying to accomplish. All things considered, I think NuPhy is going to sell a lot of the Air60HE. It's a pretty complete little package with solid build quality and lots of gaming-focused functionality, even if you do have to tune the spacebar stabilizers at some point. It's simply the first of its kind, and I think a lot of people will appreciate the pairing of low-profile switches with Hall effect functionality. Personally, as a predominantly productivity-driven user, not a gamer, I would love to see a 65% version of the Air60HE, as I'm still struggling to adapt to the missing arrow keys, but I do think that I would be able to make it work with another week or two of practice. But what do you think? Is the Air60HE everything that you were hoping it would be? Or is there something else that you think would be a more complete package? Let me know using the comments below. And otherwise, if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.